Welcome to today's video, which is how to make a cap, drafting the pattern and the construction. This is a one size hat, should fit most people. Normally I would do the pattern on a computer and this is how I would work it out. So I'm leaving this up so you can take a screenshot. But just to show you how we start, mark a centre point on your paper, can be any paper. I'm using some kids' drawing paper here. And then mark 150 millimeters. And you're going to draw a circle that wide. So draw your circle around with a compass. It's not a very good compass, this one. I think it was one of the kids. This is why I do it on the computer, but still. Once you've got that set, that is going to be the very top of the hat. Now I've folded the paper over, but just so I can still see my centre point. So I'm going to mark down the centre to the bottom. Now we need to draw a line across that measures 220 millimeters. So get your ruler and measure both those points there. 1, 2. Now, because the side of the hat needs to be a curve, an oval, rather than a round, we need to make a small adjustment. So I'm drawing 15 millimeters down, and then anything you can use that will form sort of an oval shape, just use that. You can see I'm using a chopping board here. I mean, if you've got French curves or dressmakers curves, that'd be great, but you can use anything really. So we've got our curve now. And then what we're going to do is we're going to draw the rest of the side in. So we mark down on the paper 100 millimeters from the centre again, and all the way around 100, right round to where your point is that you marked before. Now, again, if you haven't got something, a compass or something that you can draw this curve with, draw lots of dots where your hundreds are so that you can join them up. Now, I'm probably going to use a French curve for this, but anyway, you can just do them by hand if you do lots and lots and lots of them. So join all those up, and this is going to be the side of the cap. So I'm going a bit slowly here. I'm not used to doing it on paper, but I know a lot of you aren't adept at doing it on the computer, so I thought I'd better show the paper method. So join it all the way round, and you'll notice 2 lines at the side to finish it off. Now this is only going to be half the side. So we're going to cut it out and use it on the fold, which I'll show you a bit later. And then after this, we need to work out the brim. So again, we move down the centre, mark the centre line, and then we're going to mark 75 millimeters. And that's going to be our brim. Now from the edge, draw a 60 millimeter line in, 60 millimeters either side, and that's where you're going to join your points. So now again, if you've got something that's an oval, you can use that. So my French curve's not very much of an oval, but still. Now you can make your brim any shape, really. So I'm just cutting a rough brim at the moment. So I'm going to use my oval chopping board again. It's all a bit Heath Robinson, this, but still, never mind. So So from my 60mm point down to my 75. And there we have it. So that's going to be my brim. So now we need to cut these out. So mark everything, because once you've cut it out, you'll think, oh, what am I doing? So that's the side and that's the crown. Okay. Just check your measurements again. And again, it's a good idea to mark them in so that you know for future reference. I mean, you can resize this to all sorts of sizes, but this is a good size for a one-size cap. So as I said, the side is actually only half the side. Fold it over, just check it's pretty even. A little bit of trimming to do there, because I was doing it with a chopping board. Still, never mind. And then, as I say, that is going to be put onto the fold of the fabric. So write that down on one edge, on fold. Now the brim is quite a shallow brim. If you fancy a different shape, fold your brim in half. Cut off a couple of millimetres at the, well, a couple of centimetres at the end, because you want a square end. And I think to myself, oh, that's a bit shallow. I might make a different shape. So this is how you do it. Fold over another piece of paper. Fold over your brim pattern. Put it on the paper. And then decide how you want to shape your brim. And I fancy a little bit of a sort of a squared off brim. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mark it down at the edge, a straight line, and then curve it round to the other side. And again, I'm just going to use a French curve for this. Oops, knocked it all out of sync. Easier if you pin it down, but there we are. And then just cut out your new brim shape. Because I've made this cap lots of times, it's nice to have a different brim shape each time. Regards fabric, you can use pretty much anything for this cap. I'm going to be using some cotton drill, but you could use a lightweight wool or a felt or heavyweight cotton, anything you fancy really. So there's my brim, my new shaped brim. Now I'm going to write on them what I need to cut out. So for the brim, you need to cut 2 in the fabric and 1 in heavyweight buckram or interfacing. So you could use pelmet in interfacing. For the side, you need to cut 1 on the fold in fabric and 1 in lining. And for the crown, again, 1 in fabric, 1 in lining. So I'm going to cut out a piece of buckram, the same shape as my brim, and then I'm going to mark 10 millimeters all the way around the edge of it, because we don't want it as big as the fabric. We want it to be able to slip inside when we've sewn the brim together. So mark 10 mil all the way around, and then or halfway around, and then fold it in half and cut it. So I've marked both sides, folded it in half, and then trimmed that excess off. We'll probably have to trim it further later on, but this is a good start. and then again cut off a couple of. So we've cut the edges and just checked it's still in good shape, still fits our brim pattern with allowance around the edge. So there we are. Now I'm going to cut the fabric out. This is the lining that I'm using, some tartan, and I've cut the top and the side. And then once they're cut, fold them into 4 so that you can press them, and you'll have a mark at each north, south, east and west point then, which will make this much easier for joining up later on. So that's the side and that's the top lining. And I've also done the same with the fabric. Now I'm using quite a heavy cotton drill. Again, you can use whatever fabric you like. So I've cut them out, folded them over and pressed them so that I've got equal quarters. Now take the side fabric and stitch a seam. I've allowed 5/8 on this hat for all the seams. So stitch the seam and press open. Now we're going to join this to the top. So the widest round edge is going to join to the top. So pin all the ironed marks together first, your north, south, east and west, so that it's fairly even all the way round. So do that and then carry on pinning, and then we're going to stitch it together. Now, because this isn't an exact science, because I haven't done it on the computer, I've just done it on paper, if it's not quite right, you might have to trim a little bit off the top or manoeuvre it a bit, just fiddle about until it all fits nicely. And then we're going to stitch it together. So once it's stitched together, you want to stitch all the way around the edge, and then you want to trim, because we're then going to top stitch it. So trim quite close to your seam, a couple of millimeters away, all the way around, because we don't want the bulk, especially when we press the hat afterwards. Turn the hat the right way round, and we are going to stitch a top stitch. Top stitch you normally do a slightly larger stitch, so number 4 or something on the machine, and try and catch all the fabric from both pieces in together. The top stitching performs 2 jobs. It strengthens the hat and the seams, and it also just gives a really nice finish. It looks good and it keeps a nice crisp edge to the top. So top stitch all the way around, keeping the edges in. When that's done, join the lining exactly the same way as you joined the hat, but don't top stitch. Then the brim. Now we want to sew as near as possible to the buckram. So what I've done is I've pinned the buckram and then I've sewn the bottom seam. Don't forget both right sides together. Trim again. Turn the right way round. And we're going to press this really firmly and top stitch it. So it's now been top stitched. And now I've got to put my buckram back in. Now I did say before that it's possible that you might need to trim it again. This is because when you're sewing the fabric, obviously you can stretch it or move it, whereas the buckram stays pretty much the same. And you can see I've got an edge here that doesn't fit very well. So I'll take it out again and just trim it. So I'm just shaving a bit off the edge so that it fits a bit nicer. Back inside. Now what I want to do is fit all of these together and then stitch them together so that they don't move about when I attach them to the hat. So a pin and then a stay stitch all along all the layers, which you can see here. So it's all been stay stitched. Now I'm going to join it to the hat. So find your seam and your opposite, which is the centre of the hat at the front, which you should still have marked where you've pressed it. Then fold your brim in half to find the centre and attach the centre of the brim to the centre of the hat and pin in place. Now, as I say, I've made this quite a big brim, but you can cut any size brim you want. Once you've got the curve, you can make it any size, any shape, whatever you like. So we're going to sew this now to the hat. Now once it's sewn on, check that it's all good, and we're going to just put a few snips here because it's quite stiff at the brim edge, just to help me put the lining. So the lining is going to go right sides to the right sides of the hat. So put the hat inside the lining, right sides together. And we're going to stitch these two together. So push the brim down inside the hat, join up your seam at the back, and then go all the way around again, joining up your north, south, east and west, etc. Now when we stitch this together, we need to leave a gap. So leave a gap of about 3 inches where you'll be able to turn the hat inside out. So once it's stitched, trim the seam apart from where you left the gap. So trim everything else, just not the gap where we're stitching. I had to go around twice because I hadn't actually caught the brim in at one point, which is why you see extra stitching. Turn the hat inside, well, inside out, no, actually the right way. Turn the hat the right way out. And then we're going to stitch the lining to the hat, catching in the area that we left open for turning. So turn it all round. And we're going to stitch it down, so press it in place, and then we're going to top stitch all the way around and keep catching where we'd left the opening. So yeah, a few pins and a bit of pressing. So it's all done, it's finished. And it's up to you now whether you add a grosgrain ribbon inside or you decorate the hat or whatever you do with it. But it's a nice, easy cap to make and comfy to wear. I hope you've enjoyed this video and please subscribe. Thank you.